Hey everybody, it's Bob Heskey, and on today, our 20th episode, we kind of have a first. We have Laura Marini, who is a producer of several paranormal programs on the Travel Channel. And we're going to be talking to Laura soon. But first, I wanted to tell you about two contests, which I'd love for you to participate in. One is for Amazon Prime. If you go on Amazon Prime and watch Afraid of Nothing and leave a review, send me a copy of your review at bobheskey@gmail.com, bobheske@gmail.com. And I will pick at the end of each month a winner of the best review, picked randomly. And if you live in North America, I will send you a Afraid of Nothing t-shirt. Just give me your size and I'll send you an Afraid of Nothing t-shirt. Also, for the podcast listeners, which I'm sure those of you listening now, if you please send me an MP3, no longer than 30 seconds, a quick review of either this podcast as a whole or a favorite episode, what you liked about it, I will air one or two of those at the beginning of shows upcoming. And also at the end of each month, I will randomly pick a winner. And I will be able to ship a t-shirt to someone who lives in North America, Afraid of Nothing t-shirt. So if you're overseas, please still do leave reviews on Amazon Prime and send me an MP3 for the podcast. If you know somebody in the U.S., I can send them a t-shirt on your behalf. So thank you very much, and on with the show.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey. Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing. Nothing.
Hello, Laura Marini. We met at the Mass Paracon. God, it's been like 9 months ago. And I had told you about the podcast there, I think. And it's taken this long to get you on the show. But you are episode 20, Laura.
Wow. Do I win anything? A year's supply of turtle wax?
Yeah, I'll get you another copy of the DVD for Afraid of Nothing.
Which was very good. So
yeah,
thank
she
you.
bought it. And she just watched it, folks, before she was on here, which is great. And that's a compliment from you because you are a producer. I've had a bunch of people on the show. You're the first producer of the paranormal that I've had on or that our listeners get to listen to. And you bring kind of a different perspective. And you've worked on a lot of shows that people may be familiar with. The most famous ones I'll throw out are The Haunting Of, which is basically one-hour shows about celebrities with haunted houses, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then also Most Terrifying Places. One of my favorite places was on there, which was the S.K. Pierce house in Gardner.
Yes, very haunted.
Then a very popular show right now, Destination Fear. So we can't go into specifics on the shows, but let's just talk about, as a producer, what your job is.
Sure.
You know, I've made a couple movies myself, and I think producer is one of the hardest jobs around because you have to plan things and you have to react when things go wrong. So can you kind of talk about the different types of roles that a producer does for TV shows?
Sure. And I think they're similar, definitely, when it comes to the paranormal or whether it comes to true crime or whether it comes to history. And in many cases, the producer is the person who comes up with the idea for that episode. Like the show has already been greenlit by the network and someone had came up with that. But episodically, producers often have input on what that topic is or what the location is. Like for some of the shows that we do that are paranormal, we have to find these locations and talk to the owners, find out they'll allow us to shoot there or what kind of permits we need, whatever. But also we are looking for people with real stories. So you have to be able to connect with folks really quickly and really kind of suss out if they have a story that's credible, if they can tell it well, if they're going to be okay on camera, they're going to be able to tell their own story, to be able to bring out the story of people. Often on true crime shows, folks, this is the worst time of their life and they have to relive it. And you want to be sympathetic, but you also, having done this enough times and having to listen to your own voice interviewing them later when you go and listen to it or watch it and try to pick the pieces that are going to end up in the show, you have to know what you need and what people at home will need in order to understand the story. So it's a lot of things. It's logistics, it's hand holding, it's thinking 6 steps ahead, like you just said, because you've done this too. You have to have contingency plans. I always say that you have to have all your logistics and everything locked down so that you can then be spontaneous. So there shouldn't be any surprises on your end.
Yeah. I got to tell you, when I made a drama, so I made 2 films. One was a drama called Blessed, which one of our mutual friends, Rob Fitz, was from Salem. He runs the Magic Parlor. He was the director of that. I hired him, and he helped me get a lot of the crew because he knows a lot of people locally.
Oh, I love Rob Fitz.
Rob and the crew were great, but I was just a nervous wreck because it was my first film. So I was so stressful as a producer. I mean, I think I did a good job, but when I didn't enjoy the journey because I was so worried about everything and things kept happening.
Mm-hmm.
When I made a documentary, Afraid of Nothing, that was a little more measured. I could do it on weekends and spread it out. But I found the producer role very challenging, at least for my personality.
Mm-hmm.
Is it common for a person to be a producer on multiple episodes of a show?
Oh, yeah. How it works in the national TV shows or whatever is you usually have about 3 or 4, depending on how many episodes you've been greenlit for. Like, say there's 3 producers for the season, usually take on like 3 episodes and you're in charge of that episode. But if it's something like segmented, like Mysteries at the Museum or Most Terrifying, those you actually have segment producers who are finding locations who just, it's like they have to be able to produce like these little 7-minute pieces that stand alone. So there's a difference between someone who can produce for an hour or 2 hours. Like I did a 2-hour documentary on the captains of Star Trek back in 2010, which was a labor of love. But it's like you have to be able to pull a story arc through 10 segments or 10 acts, whereas some of these other ones are more like like telling short stories. But then again, you have to be more elegant sometimes when you're telling a short story because you only have 7 minutes to tell it rather than 2 hours, or for an hour in TV is like 42 minutes and 10 seconds or something without the commercials.
Yeah. So that's like, they're almost like anthologies. And I wonder if that's even more challenging because any anthology you watch, some are horrible, some segments, and some are good. And it's on you to make sure that all of them are good, correct?
Well, when I do supervising producer, yes, you're kind of the overarching person, but you always we try to find producers who can adapt a style that is similar so that when you're watching it, you can't tell, oh, a different person produced that. A different person produced that. You want the styles to be enough the same so that there's a look to the show. Like you don't want to find someone who is, their ego's too big and they're like, oh, I'm going to put my own stamp on it. You want people who can bring your vision to life. You want people who can say, oh, this is what that show looks like. And I'm going to adapt to that style. I mean, of course you want to be creative and bring all your A game to it, but you don't want to make it look like someone could look at it and go, that doesn't look like the rest of the show. Yeah,
that's a lot of. I'm saying it again, but I mean it's a lot of responsibility. And I know if I was doing a crew again, one of the main people I look for right away is a producer because there's a lot of trust in that person to get it right. How did you start in this? Did you go to school for at Emerson, or how did you start in this thing?
Let's see. My undergrad's in TV, of course. Well, not of course, but I guess in this case, everyone has different roots. Yeah. Like I have a cousin who was an actor first, and then he became a producer, and he's very good, but because he knew what it was like in front of the camera. I guess I always used to be like a stage manager for plays and all that kind of stuff, and I was a DJ on radio, and actually was the general manager of radio stations. I think it's a similar kind of thing as a producer from being like a stage manager and a general manager or whatever. A lot of producers' work is management as well as creative. So you kind of have to do both. So you have to kind of, I guess, be neurotic about details and I mean, I was a military brat, so to lock down everything. You know that you need to have X, Y, and Z. You better have that ready. You better have backup. That you always have contingencies. You're always 3 steps ahead in case something is awry. And when it comes to the paranormal, there's always, I mean, and the more paranormal I do, the more I know that you've got to be ready for contingencies because things happen. You go there, you've got all your batteries, they're fresh, everybody's got fresh batteries in, and then the audio goes out. You had that happen on Afraid of Nothing. Yeah. We used to have that all the time on The Haunting of, I mean, Kim would be talking to a celebrity like Meatloaf, and then the lights go out. We're all standing in the dark for 10 minutes. The batteries, somebody's lavalier is all wonky, even though they brand new one, nothing was wrong with it 3 minutes ago. Yeah. And it just sucks your batteries out, even though it might be really warm outside. Inside the house is cold for some bizarre reason. And yeah, all sorts of weird stuff happens.
Yeah. So you also have had stuff happen outside in your personal life. I mean, you live in New York now, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
In the epicenter of the pandemic. Did you come from Massachusetts, the Salem area? Is that where were you kind of weaned on the paranormal?
Well, I mean, I think probably a lot of your listeners, the same thing as as a young kid. I don't know, maybe this didn't happen to you, but even as a young kid, I was fascinated by witches and ghosts. And I grew up in a house that was built in the 1860s, and it used to be a former parsonage or something. And I think it was part of the Underground Railroad. Anyway, we always thought the house was haunted, and all my siblings and I used to think there was this entity in the attic called Green Eyes. Yeah, I was just always fascinated with stories. Like always pick books for book reports that were based on some unexplained event or person or unusual person. Edgar Cayce, one of my very first books I bought with my own babysitting money was There Is a River by Edgar Cayce. I mean, what kind of a person does that? So it's just been a lifelong quest. I mean, and even though I've had several secret clearances working for the military, even though I've got a master's in international relations, even though all these things, this has been always my favorite topic.
You mentioned as a producer, there's a left brain, right brain thing. There's a left brain, there's the creative side, and then there's the buttoned up side, and kind of very compartmentalized things. And you said you were kind of an arm brat. You moved around. Was your family, were you the only one in your family that was like that?
Yeah, I'm just weird. My dad actually ended up having to do a bit of traveling when we stayed put. I mean, I see now as an adult, my mom had to be alone on a number of occasions, kind of almost like a single parent in some cases if he was stationed further away or whatever. I remember going to Fort Devens to go grocery shopping at their big PX and having that big, huge grocery cart and whatever, all those things that kind of leave an impression on you as a kid. But no, I'm the only one. All my siblings are in medicine, and I'm the only weirdo. So
really, wow. Yeah. There's more of us now. It's kind of, if you look around, there's more of us around. I went into the paranormal like you. I always had a fascination with it, but I always had tunnel vision. I never had experiences. It wasn't until, or I never thought I did. And then once stuff started happening, when I made the documentary, weird stuff happened to me. And then I have a daughter that's autistic, and there was some stuff with her when she was younger, and then a little bit older. And even with Little Frog in the documentary, there was a thing with her where when I first met him, he was actually to my ex-wife, he had an interest in children with autism because he felt like they kind of vibrated on a higher level, and he wanted to kind of come in and meet her and kind of talk to her and see if he could kind of connect to her. He, about a week or so later, she had pneumonia or something. She was sick. She was on the couch, and my wife sent him an email and said, "Hey, do you mind doing a remote healing?" He's like, "Well, she's younger, but if you give me approval, I'll do it." We got an email back about a couple hours later. It went on for, Brad, and you saw him on the documentary. It went on for like 4 paragraphs. He was totally blown away. Typically when he does these remote healings, he goes in his mind to this rock, and then he goes down to this tree and he goes down below where he gets his power animal, his shadow, he calls it. And then he goes and up and he does the cleaning, the remote healing. But when he went to the rock, he saw my daughter waiting for him there. And it's like totally, if you ever seen someone out of contact, you didn't expect to see them there, you don't recognize them. It totally blew his mind because in, probably about 1,000 journeys he's done, that's never happened. And he's talked to other shamans, and it's the same thing. It just literally blew his mind. And Normally I'd be skeptical, but with other things that have happened with my daughter, I'm like, yeah, that stuff happens with her. So that was really kind of interesting with me, that stuff happening. And then once I got involved in it, became easier for me to get EVPs and things like that.
Afraid of starting your own podcast? Buzzsprout makes it easy. In fact, it's so good, they've already helped over 100,000 people launch their own podcast, including me. Buzzsprout has helped me get onto many great platforms, including Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. You also get a great-looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop onto other websites, detailed analytics to see how you're doing. They're addicting, trust me. Also, tools to promote your episodes, like sound bites to give your listeners a tease of what each episode is about. Buzzsprout is not only a user-friendly platform, they continually provide useful videos, articles, and tutorials to help you hone your podcast game. To start your own podcast and get a $20 Amazon gift card, follow the link in the show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you and helps support the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Buzzsprout, the best place to launch your podcast. Don't be afraid to start today.
So here's a funny thing. Laura and I were talking, about, earlier about, equipment going, awry and things like that. And we had a deadline happen with this thing. There you go. So, Laura, I had mentioned that I had tunnel vision with paranormal experiences until I had an autistic daughter. And then I did a documentary and things kind of started happening. What about you? What was your first experience in the paranormal? And have they been pretty steady or sporadic throughout your adult years?
Well, this is the funny thing. I think I would pee myself if I actually saw something I couldn't. I will actually tell you just a quick funny story. It's not terribly funny, but my dad passed away in 2010, and I had come home to visit my sisters for Easter because my mom was on vacation or something. So I was using the house that my parents lived in, and I had a backpack, and I put it down in the middle of the dining room floor because I can't remember, but I remember placing it in the middle of the floor and saying to myself, because my dad was very orderly, like he was very jovial and outgoing, but he liked things where they belong. And I said, geez, Dad would really be mad if he saw, like, if I just left it here, whatever. And I'm like, but I did. And I went to the kitchen and I was making a snack or something. And I called a friend to make breakfast plans. And all of a sudden, and I'm on the phone with my friend Brian, and I'm talking away, and I turn around and my backpack is in the door of the kitchen. And I'm like, Brian, my backpack is, and then I'm like, oh my God, maybe my dad moved. And I was like, Dad, I'm not ready to see you. Please, I love you. But I think I will absolutely have a coronary if you show up. But because I thought to myself, wait a minute, did I move it? Did I bring it there and drive? But it doesn't make sense because the bedroom I was staying in was in the other direction. You know what I mean? Like you walk in and you're in the dining room and either you go to one direction and go to the bedroom that I was going to be staying in, or you go in the other direction and go to the kitchen. There was no reason I would bring the backpack because there was nothing I needed. I would need it in the bedroom. So It wouldn't make sense. So I mean, like my brain is click, 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 thinking, did I do this? Did I do this? So things like that. And then another time I was going to watch Game of Thrones with my mom when I was visiting her, and they had this bed that was covered in like Louis XIV pillows, Yeah. My dad loved beautiful things. So I took the pillows off the bed and I placed them on the floor, and I plugged my cell phone into the outlet near the window, and I parked my phone on the windowsill. And I went out of the room to get a glass of water, and my mom's she was in the master bathroom before we were going to watch this Game of Thrones. And I come back and she's still in the bathroom. And now my cell phone is pulled out of the wall and laying on the pillows. And I looked at her and I'm like, did you pull my phone out? And she's like, no, it's your father playing games with you. And It's so funny because that's not what she's like. You know what I mean? She's very, she was the mayor of our town, or whatever. And it was just funny because.
Was she tongue in cheek when she said that, or does she now?
No, she Because my dad used to love to do that. He would, like, if you'd go to a restaurant and meet him for lunch or something, when you got home, you'd find that there were like packets of sugar and stuff in your purse. Like, he would do funny little, he was a jokester and just loved to play with people. So I think, yeah, and whatever. Anyway, but those are adult things. I mean, those happened in the last 5 years. And I think I've always had one of those weird things where I knew something was going to happen before it did. It's not like I've taken I haven't really practiced, or I haven't really tried to hone psychic abilities, and I certainly don't bill myself as one. But my family always checks on with me before they go somewhere or does something. Like,
wow.
If I say something's going to happen, they take it kind of seriously, which is pretty funny. I've had a couple of weird experiences on shoots. One, we didn't actually know what was happening until we saw the pictures later, which was pretty freaky. We were in these tunnels in England, in the Drakelow tunnels, really cold, 7 miles of underground tunnels that were built for World War II so that the Nazis wouldn't know that there was a factory under this mountain. So we're shooting, and this one lovely gal had this crazy experience where I'm trying to remember, she almost like felt possessed or something. Anyways, she tells her story on camera, and then we shoot these dramatic recreations. And she was playing herself in the dramatic recreation. And then there's a guy died in the mines during World War II, when they were blasting the mines. They used too much like dynamite, and the rubble came down, and he passed away. A lot of people who have gone into these tunnels in this, the last whatever years, have seen this man in coveralls, like a workman's coveralls,
Yeah.
So she tells, after she told her story, now we're recreating it, and she's playing herself, and then one of the actors is playing her friend, and there's another actor playing the ghost, right? And I won't give away our secrets on how we shoot it so that he's see-through. But anyway, he's standing behind them. And then we had a production assistant, lovely young guy, taking pictures, like production stills. The next day, one of the gals from the shoot says, "Hey, I think, young Freddie caught a ghost on camera last night." And we're like, "What?" And we look at it. And so here's a picture. There's me giving direction, camera guy, Dave, and then the gal, Jolene, her friend, the guy playing her friend, Gary, or whatever, the guy playing the ghost standing behind them in coveralls. And then the next picture, taken immediately after, I've stepped out of the shot. So there's Dave, there's Jolene, there's her friend Gary, and then I think Rolf, or whatever his name was, standing behind them as the ghost. And now in this second picture, there's a second guy in overalls standing against the wall.
Wow.
Yeah. And everyone, John Zaffis, I showed it to him at Salem Con or Mass Paracon, and he was like, "Oh my God, that's a really good one." But the strange thing is that when we were shooting it, Jolene said, "He's here." Like, she could feel him.
Was it an apparition that was solid, or was it kind of like fuzzy, or could you see through it?
If you look at the picture, it's really crazy. It's like you can actually see him. He's translucent, but you can see he's wearing the same overalls that we had, the similar overalls, not the exact same thing, but similar overalls to the guy that we had the actor in. But he's wearing a cap, like a newsboy cap, which we didn't have anybody in. So there was absolutely no one else in our crew dressed like that. So there's really no explaining why there's this figure leaning against the wall. It's kind of like, it's just so bizarre because Jolene at that time had said she felt that guy there listening to her.
You had mentioned earlier when you were growing up in your house, there was some type of entity with green eyes. Can you talk about that?
Well, I think that's actually kind of it's funny. It's sad or whatever. When we were kids, we used to think that because there was, the attic we had in this house was kind of cool. It had like eaves and stuff.
Yeah.
And it had this long closet that took a turn. Like, you walked into it. There was like a rod that you could hang clothes in the front part, but then it actually went all the way. It took a right turn and went all the way to the front of the house. So it was like this long thing. Well, in later years, we found out there was just like some Christmas decorations that were making these glowing eyes.
All right.
But we were also afraid. Yeah. So really, it's kind of but the house made all sorts of creaking noises all the time.
Yeah.
We didn't know if it was just like the settling of an older house, but there was noise. Oh, and our dog, we had a dog named Jeremy, a German Shepherd, that our family's dog, and he passed away. But all of us would hear his chain around his, like they wear tags around their neck,
Yeah.
we would all hear it at the same time. Like it wasn't like one person heard it or whatever. It'd be like, or you'd see a shadow, his shadow going across the hallway, the door of the hallway or whatever he used to always sit. But I didn't have any it wasn't like I had this one moment where this apparition came to me or talked to me or whatever. It always fascinated me. Yet my boyfriend laughs because I always say I am so scared if I ever saw a ghost in person, I think I would it would blow my mind. But I've had so many things happen that you can't really explain, but nothing to the point where it was like an apparition showed itself to me. But as I said, my boyfriend is kind of open to this stuff too, so he thinks it's kind of fascinating. I can't remember which show I was on, but we kept having the bedroom door at my house open and close, and you'd hear, and then you'd hear footsteps walk up to the bed, and there was nobody there. And then, I've lived in my apartment for 20 years, and for the first time, I kept feeling like something.
Is this a New York one?
Yeah, yes, my York. Yeah. And I have the living room is kind of long. It's like 23 feet long, but I have like a library when you first walk in, and I have a lot of books on many subjects for like Edgar Cayce and books about Mary Magdalene, about stone circles. Like I have all sorts of curious books and stuff over there. But for the first time, I kept seeing a dark shadow sitting in the corner, and Jerome saw the same things, but not the same time as me. So finally, we were like, this is getting really weird, to the point where it was a bit annoying. So I called Mark Arvilla, and I've told this story a few times. He runs the Salem Con, and he's also from the Mass Ghost Hunters or whatever. He's great, really lovely guy. So I called him because I had him on Haunted USA.
Is he an empath or is he a medium?
No, he's an investigator, and he's got equipment, and he knows his stuff, and he's a demonologist now. But at the time, I think he might have been learning it, but I wouldn't think we had a demon here. We just thought we had some sort of like noisy somebody wanting to get our attention.
Yep.
So he says to me, I'll do a Skype thing for you guys, but tell me, have you bought anything recently? Have you been somewhere or bought something? And I said, oh, I bought this new, it's not as new to me, but it's an old rocking chair with the face of the North Wind carved into it, like the Chernunus, the wild man face.
Yeah.
And if you look at the pictures, you'd be like, oh, well, that's probably what it is. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I said, but he goes, I said, I bought it from an antique store. And he said, well, call the antique store and ask them if they've had any weird things happen while the chair was there. And I'm like, they're going to think I'm crazy, but okay. So I call, and they actually were very open. They were in Maine, and they're like, no, we never had any problem while it was here, but I'll call the owner who commissioned, put it here on commission. I'm like, okay, great. She said, no, nothing, whatever. Okay. And I said to Mark, well, we've recently helped my boyfriend's ex-wife. His former father-in-law had passed away, and we helped her clean out his house to sell it or whatever. But I brought home like a Croisset pot and a couple of glasses. It's not like I didn't bring anything strange or whatever home from there. I said, but I've been on a lot of shoots, so you never know what you're going to take home. And so he does this, we're sitting in my living room, and he's on Skype, and he kind of, I guess, says a prayer of some kind of protection. And then he's got the Ovilus running, and he's like, so what, whoever is here who wants your attention, who is it you're trying to give a message to? They don't mind if you are here, but you're kind of really making a nuisance of yourself. And all of a sudden, clear as day, all of us hear Jerome from the Ovilus, and we're like, what? Because Jerome is my boyfriend's name.
Yeah. And
we're like, what? And all of a sudden, again, clear as day, it says Jerome. And we're like, okay. And so Mark says to the machine or whatever, who are you to Jerome? And it says father, or no, who is Jerome to you? And it says son. It says son. And Jerome's father passed away a long time ago, but they weren't terribly close. So, but Mark says, well, speak French to it. And because Jerome's from France, and he says, ask him something only he would know. So he does. He's asking in French, and the machine starts going crazy. It's talking a language none of us know. We're like, this is really weird. Whatever. It turns out it was his former father-in-law who he was very close with, and it was speaking Hebrew.
Wow. My God.
Yeah.
How did you find that? You
So
just had a recording of it, and you're somebody
yeah,
somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, we figured it out while during the session or whatever that it was, but it was pretty wild. So that was kind of cool. And I wasn't sure if I had brought it as an attached, whatever this was going on, as an attachment home, because I had been on many shoots that summer to a lot of haunted locations, and people are always, all these paranormal investigators are like, "You have the best job ever."
Yeah.
I'm so jealous. I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Sometimes it's kind of creepy." And we were in the Wildwood Sanitarium in Salamanca, New York, and it's an old, like, I don't know if it was a TB hospital or it was some place where they were trying to solve or cure illnesses. It was a TB hospital at one time, but before that, it was like one of those kind of experimental places that was using like electricity and water to try to shock you out of whatever ailment or weird stuff.
Yeah.
And it was falling up. The place is falling apart at the time when I was there. I'm sure they've done more work on it then. And I noticed in the kitchen window, there was this strange triangular shaped piece of wood, like between the panes of glass. And I thought, well, that's a weird piece of wood. Anyways, we went upstairs and we were recording this. We shot this reenactment. The owner said that she and her son had been renovating the third floor where the TB clinic was. And the son used to hate being up there. And he said to his mom, I used to hate being here, but now I kind of like it. And all of a sudden they hear a cracking sound and they turn, and the bathroom window shattered in like 100 pieces, like both out and in. So it wasn't like a baseball came through the window and it broke or whatever. Because the bathroom was a very large bathroom, and I think they had taken out the tub at the time. So there was, the only thing in the room, I think, was the sink, and they had boarded up the window with wood because it had just broken. And I said, "Do you still have the glass pieces from the window when it broke?" And she said, "Yeah, I think so." So we lay the glass pieces out. We do the story, whatever. We're cleaning up the room to go back to move on to the next thing. And I'm looking at my list. I'm the last person left in the bathroom. Feels kind of creepy in there. And I'm looking at my clipboard, and all of a sudden from the closet somersaults out at me this triangular piece of wood, like the one I saw in the kitchen. And it missed me by like just inches. It wasn't like it just kind of just fell out of the closet, and there wasn't anyone in the closet. It really like had some momentum behind it. It was weird. I was like, okay, I'm out of here. I mean, as a producer, you're always tucked someplace away where other people aren't, because you're trying to listen. You're trying to make sure that you're getting the angles. You're watching it on a monitor, whatever. And so there was no room for me in this room that they were shooting in. So I'm by myself in this like kind of darkened stairwell right outside the door where everybody is shooting inside. And I can hear this layered whispering. And it was like,
oh, wow.
First I thought, well, maybe the crew, the rest, because there's only so many people in that room shooting. There's a lot more crew. There's production assistants and other people in the house. And I thought, oh, maybe they're being polite and trying to like stay out of the way or whatever. And I kind of walked quietly down this part of the staircase and looked around the corner and didn't know nobody there. I was like, oh, that's weird. And it was just like, there was so many different strange things that were happening. I was just so glad when we were out of that place. Travis Tritt, lovely, lovely man. He has a cabin out in the woods. And so I've got the 3 cameramen shooting, and I'm hiding behind a tree because I don't, of course, want anyone to see me. I'm not part of the story. And I'm looking at the monitor, and there's like this kind of orb floating around them. And I didn't know if it was a bug or whatever, but anyway, all of a sudden I feel something pinch my butt really hard. And I thought, well, maybe I'm in the shot. And I turned around, there's absolutely no one there. And I didn't get bit by a bug or anything. It was just like, oh, that was interesting. But for me, it's like never anything that you can explain away that, oh, maybe some whatever. But there's certainly been plenty of other weird things that have happened that you like, there's like no way somebody could know something or whatever, and then they do. So I've experienced enough things that are unexplainable that I know that there are things going on that we can't see, or there's other things going on besides what's in front of you.
Yeah, you just mentioned like a bunch of stuff. You mentioned the only one that was debunked was a childhood thing about with the green eyes, but you mentioned there was an apparition that appeared in a photo.
Mm-hmm.
There was, these noises that you heard, which could have been EVPs, but actually you heard them live, which is pretty rare. You felt something physically. We've actually had a lot of experience. It's very, I've actually, like Jeff Belanger does research for Ghost Adventures.
Oh, I love Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And he's like, in 20 years, only 4 things have happened, but they've been pretty extreme, and they're pretty extreme for me. And he recounts some of those stories.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost like he'll say, like, yeah, but 4 things, but you think about it, each of those are pretty traumatic, like some of the things that he saw. So I think you've got a pretty good library of things that have happened to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not comparing them with anyone. I mean, everyone has their own, their own path to walk, I guess. And I've always just found it fascinating. I think humans are a lot more involved or whatever than they realize. I mean, there's more of our brain. We only use 10% of our brain. I take a course on controlled remote viewing, like they use for the psychic spies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing. I took a weekend course, which was fascinating on CRV, and I remember the first, that's where they put like a target picture in an envelope and you never see it.
Yep.
But the people who are monitoring you have, and then you go through a protocol of, this is what the military taught or whatever. So it's not like some kind of just woo woo thing, but so you're doing this protocol that you'll have to take the class if you want to learn it, but anyone can learn. And I'm going through and I kept seeing, strangely, like courtroom drama with like Nicole Kidman and Emma Thompson or something. Like they'd never been in it before, but I'm seeing this thing and I said, that's like central casting.
Yeah.
And you have to, if you have errant thoughts, you're supposed to write them down on the paper. And then I go back to the protocol and I'm doing the work, and then I see Tom Hanks bobbing in the water, and I said, that's Castaway. And I write that down and I'm back doing my thing. Turns out the picture was 2 men casting metal from a helmet. So my producer brain saw it as central casting.
Wow.
And Castaway. It was trying to tell me in language that I understood what the picture was.
Wow.
And then for my graduation one for the weekend, after you've taken all that stuff, they send you out of the room and everybody sees the target picture. We put it in the envelope. I come back in. I'm outside the Eileen Garrett Library in Long Island. And Eileen Garrett was one of the famous psychics of last century. Like she was a contemporary with Edgar Cayce, and I know her granddaughter is a lovely woman. Anyway, so she has a library with all of her books and all that stuff. So I come back outside. I'm standing outside waiting while everyone else is seeing the target, and I keep hearing in my head, "There's nothing like a dame from South Pacific." Now, I'm not like a big Broadway person, so it's not like I ever sing that song. Nothing like a dame, nothing in the world, whatever. And so I come back, they bring me in and I sit down, and the monitor who's, going to be running the session says, "Is there anything, that you were thinking of or whatever that you need to get out on paper?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm singing Nothing Like a Dame from South Pacific." And everyone starts laughing. And I thought, well, I'm either like 100, like on it 100% or completely off. Like it's either one or the other, but not something in the middle.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were going through the protocol and blah, 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 and I'm doing my thing. I saw feathered headdress, and I'm thinking like those women like that dance in Mardi Gras, or those Brazilian dancers with the big feathered headdresses, and a slung skirt and whatever. I see fire. I'm going through the protocol. Turns out it was 2 Maasai warriors with feathered headdresses and like loincloths at a fire ceremony. But they ain't nothing like dames.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you one of the stars of that class, or did everybody walk out feeling pretty good about themselves after taking it?
I think a number of, I'm sure some people did. I just remember my experience was so wild. And, I certainly dabble in it here and there, and I wish I'd take more time. I really have no excuse because of this, pandemic. I should have been doing a lot more of it. But yeah, every time I do it, and of course, this is another funny story, and stop me if I've gone on too long.
No, keep going.
Okay, so I was working on an episode of a mystery show, kind of another one of those segmented ones, and this was going to be a story about the psychic spies and how they actually, during the Carter administration, found this downed spy plane in the forests of, I can't remember which country, Cameroon, somewhere in the world or whatever. Somebody had asked Jimmy Carter if something strange had happened what's the weirdest thing that happened during your administration? And he said, wow, these psychic spies found this plane. So everyone was rushing to find this downed plane because it had a lot of information that anybody, our enemies or us, would want. So whoever got to that plane first would get not only the technology of the plane, but also of all the stuff it had been collecting. So they rerouted all these satellites and tried to look for it. The forests were so dense, whatever, no one could find it. So finally, somebody without Carter's knowledge sent Russell Targ and those guys, we need to find this plane. They put some people on it. The psychic spy was able to actually even draw a topography of the area and what it was and whatever. They find this plane. I guess later when he gets called and they tell him, President Carter, we found the plane. It's only been 48 hours. He's like, great work. How'd you do that? Oh, these psychic spies. So unfortunately, this is after I think it was like maybe 20 years later, and Clinton's the president. Unfortunately, he blew the secret off of this top secret branch of the government by saying this. Oh. And so then Clinton had to supposedly disband this arm of the government. Anyway, so I want to, of course, it's a mystery show. So you want to tell this story. It's kind of cool. I want to make sure we get that we're doing the right information and we're not lying or anything. So through people I knew, I was able to talk to Lynn Buchanan, who actually, what's his name? The movie The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yeah, George Clooney.
Yeah, George Clooney. The character that George Clooney's based on is actually this guy that I spoke to. So Lynn, he was one of the psychic spies. And so I'm talking to him. I'm on vacation, of course, because as a producer, you never stop working.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him on the phone because that was the only time he had available or something. And I'm in this condo in Daytona, Florida. And the master bedroom had one of those bathrooms that had like a mirror with like those big lights as if you were some sort of Hollywood starlet getting makeup or whatever. Yeah. And I can see the lights on the vanity glowing orange and then fading to gray, and then glowing orange and fading to gray. Now we've been in this condo for a week and had never done that before. And I said to Lynn, because I'm on the phone with him, I said, hey, Lynn, something weird is happening. The light bulbs are glowing in the bathroom. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, that's probably me. But I mean, that's pretty weird, right? I mean, yeah. That's you can't deny it's happening in front of you. So I think humans have a lot more capabilities than we even know.
Yeah. When you go to a place, is there anything that you take as protection or is there a prayer that you do for cleansing before?
It's funny that you ask, because I didn't the first season. A number of seasons I've been to haunted places and didn't do anything. And I think I brought more stuff home. And so, strangely, when I'd go to these conventions or whatever, people would just unsolicited come up to me and say, you need to carry X, Y, or Z with you, or you need to do this or do that. And I thought, how strange. Why, they don't know me. So Jerome and I went to, I think, Namaste bookstore or something here in the city. And we had a friend, Dee Dee, who now owns, the Crystal Garden in the Appalachian, I can't remember, in the Adirondacks. Anyway, she was working there and she picked out an agerine necklace for me, which I wore the whole season shooting, most terrifying. And I didn't have anything bother me this last time go around. So I'm not saying it worked. I'm just saying that, nothing happened to me. So
that's not cheap. That's kind of expensive, that stuff, right? I mean,
it's a small sliver of it, but I'd wear it. Yeah. If I didn't wear it around my neck, I wore it in my pocket. And I also always carry, this is so funny. And there's a place in Maine that my mom and my sisters and I go every year, and they have like this Christmas festival and everything. And there's a monastery up there, and they have a gift shop, and they had holy water and these little cute plastic vials that say holy water on them. So I would always carry in either my backpack or my back pocket this vial of holy water. So people would think it was pretty funny, but I'm like, I'm not taking any chances. And if you know me, I mean, I've got jewelry on from every tradition. So I've got a ring that I've worn for the last 7 years. That's actually the stamp of an imam. It's like the first paragraph of the Quran.
Yeah.
I have another beautiful ring that's a coral carved Ganesha, Saint Michael. I've always got stuff on of his and whatever. So I'm like, whoever is in charge, just stand within 12 feet of me if something bad happens, because I'm covered by all of them.
Yeah, I want to stand near you. I had the last episode, part of it was getting an Akashic reading by a guy named Andy Grant. He's an energy healer.
Oh, yeah, very cool.
First time I did it, right? And one of my last questions was, should I keep doing this paranormal stuff? Am I ever going to be in? Because I shared with him this kind of, when I did the documentary, it's not in the documentary, but there was this weird thing that happened afterwards where I was laying in bed one night and I literally felt my rib cavity push out and open, and something like leapt out of me.
Ew.
It was like a reverse punch in the gut.
Ew.
It was really weird. And I was facing, and I wasn't asleep. I was in bed. I was facing my ex-wife, who was asleep at the time. And, I didn't tell her, but as it happened, her eyes fluttered a little bit weird. But, yeah, and it's one of those moments where you're like, did that happen? And then I thought,
Yeah.
my mind's going, I'm like, did my soul just leave me? Oh my God, what happened? Is it a dark entity? So I had asked about that, and I asked about, is it dangerous to, I'm doing podcasts, but eventually I will go back, and, I was at the Conjuring house, a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, that place is creeper dude.
Yeah, it was during
Yeah.
the day, fortunately, but, and I asked, is there anything that I should, be wary of? And his response was pause. And it was like, yeah, there are, you've had bad, dark entities in the past. Now it's just like scar tissue on you now, but they do worry that you need to protect yourself if you do that. So I have to like text you about where you got that stuff. So.
Oh, okay. Yep. Well, I mean, we gotta be careful. Everyone needs to be smart and, don't push your luck, and don't be stupid and think you can control something that you have no idea what it is or whatever. So, I'm pragmatic in that case. I mean, I'm a triple Virgo. I'm a Virgo rising, Taurus moon. So I'm a triple Earth girl. So that sounds like I'm a, woo, but.
Well, that's smart, because I think I got to figure out what's right for me. You found obviously some stuff that's good for you that works. And I think, I think it's different for everybody. Sometimes it's a prayer. Sometimes it's spritzing with frankincense or whatever. But, you got to find your own thing that you do. So right now you were working on Destination Fear. Great show. It's like 3 seasons so far, I guess, correct?
2. I mean, they just finished airing the season, the spring season of it. Yes, it did very well, and they're super lovely kids. Can't say enough nice things about them. Yeah, they're great.
I got to tell you, I watched the Travel Channel, and I don't know why they call it the Travel Channel. It should be the Paranormal Channel.
Right.
Why do they do that? But it's like I'm seeing tons of reruns. If I ever wanted a job, I want to be on that Caught on Paranormal, Caught on Tape or whatever. I want to be one of those podcasters, Bob, Afraid of Nothing podcast, and I just react and say something top of mind of something that I just saw. That looks like a UFO. That would be a great gig for me, not have to just comment on something without having to go there.
I think that because of the whole COVID thing or whatever, there's going to be more and more of clip shows, because you don't have to go and shoot them somewhere. You can actually, they find these really great clips, and then they have folks just do their little thing like you were talking about, commenting on it, and they can cut it all together, and it's interesting, and people will watch it, because everything now in production, I mean, everything went to a standstill, obviously. And then, of course, when people are going to start going back on the road, you're going to have to take a lot more precautions, and it's just not the same. I mean, it's not the same anymore. So
how do you prep as a producer? You're at home in your New York apartment. You can't go out. Are you doing prep? Are you doing work, getting ready for when you go out again?
Yeah, you can. Of course. Everybody's doing everything they can do. I mean, whatever shows that are starting up. I think in a sense, COVID kind of gave people a time to kind of, if you were lucky enough to have a place to stay and food to eat and whatever, you had a time to do some creative projects that you maybe put on the back burner for a long time. Maybe people had some ideas or wrote some books or had some ideas for pitches or whatever. Like, hey, this is the time. If I'm going to get paid to sit home and not infect other people, then I might as well come up with some ideas. So yeah, I've had a couple pitches that I'm shopping around. So fingers crossed.
Are they reality type shows, or are they dramas, or?
No, they are in the paranormal realm.
They're like live action. They're not like, they're not fiction. They're nonfiction. They're actually based on real events.
They're based on real events, but there would be some animation involved.
Now, you've been a director and a writer as well as a producer. What do you enjoy the best doing?
I love directing. I love being in the field. I love meeting folks. I mean, that's the thing. People want to poo-poo a lot of the stuff when it comes to paranormal, when it comes to UFOs, whatever. You meet some folks who are extremely credible. And I think that's what happened with J. Allen Hynek, the guy who the government had to debunk all the UFO sightings. And he had met so many cops and folks who there was nothing that they would get out of telling people what they saw if they didn't see it.
Air Force pilots, things like that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the whole Kenneth Arnold. I did the Kenneth Arnold story. Yeah. That's another thing about being a producer, which is cool, is you learn so much about history, so many little pockets of history, little stories that that you didn't even know about. That's the fascinating thing, I think, for me. You never get bored because there's always something. And even all these, I think that paranormal is going to save a lot of history because people are, they're willing to spend the money to go and investigate, and it's paying for the rehab of a lot of these older buildings. So, and then you actually have to learn the history. And when we tell the story as storytellers, we need to know the real history. You don't want to be making up the history. You want to tell the history.
Oh, yeah.
Just look at the pandemics of the past. I mean, we've done so many shows on the tuberculosis epidemic, and there were so many TB hospitals. What a horrible time that was in this country. But now we can actually understand it in a way that we never could before, was what that quarantine was like.
Yeah. And, I think Jeff Belanger says ghosts are history, or he likes to say that a lot. I know he's mentioned, and I agree with that. It's not just a scary thing that goes bump in the night, but there's some history there, and there is some great stuff. So kind of makes sense that you like history and you like the paranormal. What is your favorite place what's your favorite kind of haunted town? I know you're Massachusetts, or you've spent some time there. Is it Salem?
I adore Salem. I do love Salem. And we love going to Salem Con, and Mass Paracon was great too. Sam did a great job organizing that.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite towns. You mean just one of my favorite haunted towns?
Yeah.
Eureka, Arkansas.
Really? Okay. I've never heard it. Really?
Wow. Where the Crescent Hotel is.
Huh. Okay.
In Eureka, Arkansas. That's a creepy. I mean, it's really cute and really creepy at the same time. That place is super haunted. Oh my God, that's another great story. So I was shooting at the Crescent Hotel. It's a place where back in the 20s or 30s, this total sham doctor, quack, whatever, he was a vaudeville guy, and he had a radio show, and he was trying to, of course, line his pockets. So he buys this hotel that used to be the Grand Dome of the Ozarks and turns it into a cancer hospital, and sends out invitation to people that I can cure your cancer. I have this miracle cure, blah, blah, blah. He has a radio show. All these people start showing up. The town is reborn because of the money pouring in from this cancer hospital. And he was he was actually injecting people with peppermint and watermelon juice, some really awful, and people were dying and stuff. So there's a lot of death in this hotel.
Yeah.
So I'm staying. It was me, my associate producer, and my cameraman, and the rest of the folks we got local. And so they were going to give us several rooms in the place. And I'm like, don't give me a haunted room. Just please don't give me a haunted room. I'm tired. I have a lot of work to do. So we were looking at the different options we had. And so my AP takes this room on the first floor. The cameraman takes one on the second floor. And even though the elevator is broken, there was such a charming room on the top floor that had a little living room attached to it with the ceilings were kind of arched or whatever, a really funny, a room as if you were Shirley Temple in a movie. And it was a really cute room. Anyway, so I'm in this room. I'm my dad said I could go into an empty room and mess it up. So I took my backpack and I basically dumped it all out on the coffee table, and I've got all my stuff there, and fixing my face in the bathroom to go down to meet their people from the hotel that were hosting us for dinner. So I keep feeling this weird, I feel like somebody's staring at me, and I had this weird feeling I should not mess up this room. So strangely, I take everything and pack it back up into the backpack, and I say to the room out loud, I don't know who I'm talking to, but I say, okay, let's just make a truce here. I will keep it clean and you won't show up. Okay. Just leave me alone and just don't show up. So I go down to have dinner, and they have a restaurant there in the first floor, sitting with the PR person. And I said to him what had just happened. And he said, how did you know to do that? And I said, I don't know. I just had this weird feeling. He goes, because other people have found their bags packed and by the door. Another camera crew, the producer, had the same problem, but yeah. So, I mean, I think that would have freaked me out. I don't think I slept for 48 hours straight because that place is so creepy. And the funny thing is, I'm good friend. I mean, I made friends with the folks there. They're so lovely, and end up going back there for another show. and having to stay in another haunted room. It's like, stop putting me in haunted room.
Were there a lot of haunted rooms there, or they just put you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. All right.
No. There's it's not just like one haunted room. There's plenty of haunted rooms in that place. So that was kind of a funny story.
Two more questions, if you don't mind. So one is,
yes, sure.
Do you watch paranormal shows when you're not
Oh
working?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So are there shows that you like?
Yeah, I really enjoy the Holzer files. I think that's a fascinating concept to take the files of one of the first people to do paranormal investigations.
I used to read his books growing up.
Yeah, Hans Holzer. Yeah. I think they could do that with there must be other folks as well. You could kind of base a similar.
Edward Casey.
Oh, Edgar Casey.
Maybe that could be your next pitch, Laura.
Yeah. I don't think I haven't already tried. But yeah, no, Edgar Casey's such a fascinating character. But what's great about Holzer Files is they actually have his daughter that they can talk to about what it was like, what she remembers of his cases, although she's not on every episode. And I think Cindy's great. The Cindy Kays of their psychic's great.
Yeah, she is good. Now, let's see if we agree on this. The Dead Files, do you like that at all?
I like it. I've watched it a number of times, and you get sucked in. And I'm kind of, I guess, in a sense, a cop when you're like, oh, you want to find someone who's very credible, and they want to know, so I think there's certainly ways to test if people are real psychics or fake psychics. I mean, wasn't Houdini was after the fake psychics, and he actually met with Edgar Casey, and like all other psychics that he had met, he would completely rip them apart. And then he ended up meeting Casey, and then he ended up writing a movie script, if you can believe it, called The Man from Across the Threshold or something like that. He was so, I think, taken with the truth of Edgar Casey and that he wasn't a liar.
Yeah.
So, yeah, some pretty cool people out there in our history. And I think there's actually a book called They Knew the Unknown that it's kind of like an anthology of people who have kind of seen beyond the veil or whatever.
I think I'll, close on one thing. You also do voiceovers.
Well, if you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning or something,
I do.
You might hear it. Like I was the voice of Slim and Six, the Beachbody commercials, infomercials. I'm trying to remember some of the lines from that. They have shakes and soups and also whatever. I can't remember. And then I did a radio campaign for South African tourism and our safari. Anyway. And oh gosh, all sorts of stuff. I've done a lot of bank commercials, and it's so funny. I auditioned for one. It was for the East Texas Bank or something, and they said it was pretty good for a Yank. So I got it, even though I was from the North. Although I think I've hidden my accent pretty well, but they can still hear it.
No, you're battling two demons. You're battling the Boston and you're battling the New York, and you've done well. I think you've kind of neutralizing that.
Yeah, I worked really, really hard. When I was in graduate school, my graduate degree is in international relations. I wanted to be a war reporter. Yeah, that didn't get me too far. But anyway, I had friends from Cyprus. I had friends from West Virginia, and people were making fun of my Boston accent. I thought it must be really bad. I mean, my accent must be horrendous in order for people to be making fun of me that have thick accents themselves. So when I moved to New York in 1993, I made sure to say Central Park and car and stuff like that. But when I go home, my sisters have the accent, and my mom not so much, but my sisters definitely, and it's fun. And you can slip back into it. I always tell people I can recall it on command, or if I'm pissed off or drunk or angry.
Yeah, I went to college at Indiana University. And they picked it up there a lot and I never realized. I would say I dear, with an R, that sort of stuff happened a lot. So, and they would pick up on that, It's funny in Indiana, they always think someone from Boston because that's like they think Massachusetts is not much else. So, is there anything else that you'll be working on soon, or you want to let us know?
Well, I'm always looking for I'm always looking for great locations that haven't been done to death. So if people know of great haunted locations that they've investigated, that they haven't seen, that think they should have some national attention, I'm always open to hearing about that.
Now, is that more like residential? Because there's a lot of, hidden gem stories in resident, or is it bigger, like a hospital?
Both. Depends upon, every show is different. Like Most Terrifying Places, which is not on right now. It's on actually in repeats and stuff, but that's kind of a place where you could do either.
Yep.
But I'm always looking for everything. But right now, bigger abandoned kind of places are kind of cool. Institutions, because they have great history to them, like places that are an abandoned military academy or an abandoned, I'm trying to think. I mean, of course, there's always TB hospitals and orphanages and whatever, but yeah, there's cool places that have a great rich history.
And would it also be places that aren't like buildings? Could it be like cemeteries or highways or whatever in the woods, or you focus more on buildings and places?
Yeah, it's hard to do any kind of show, no matter which kind of show I'm on, in an open place. You know, because
can't control the elements and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one thing if it's part of a story. It's another thing if it's trying to be the story. But there's a lot of fantastic places in the world, and they're all just waiting for their stories to be told.
Cool. And the projects that you're working on right now, is it okay to plug those?
We just finished airing Destination Fear, this season that just ended like last week with Sheboygan Asylum. That was pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, not right now. It's pretty quiet. I hate to say it's dead out there, but it's pretty quiet.
Okay, you said if someone had a place, would you like them just to contact me or contact you? What's the best thing to do?
Well, they can find me on Facebook, or they could bother you, and they can ring you up, or they can ring me up. Right. One or the other.
Yeah, so you're Laura Marini, Marini.
Correct.
And you're on Facebook.
I am. So, anyways, it was a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, this is excellent. Not only did I get a perspective of the producer aspect, but you have so many stories, like even more than you probably even realize. Thank you so much, Laura, and I hope I run into you again soon at another paranormal conference once we can get out again.
Yes.
That'd be great.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout-out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.